Okay, well, my name's Stacey Lane, and I want to just thank you all for coming today. And this here is Chuck Holman. And today we're here to give you a workshop about abundance, love, NLP, and you. And one of the things, just real quickly here, I'm going to tell a little bit about myself and have Chuck tell a little bit about himself. I think it's always important to know who your source is, okay? Like, who's telling me this, right? So I am, again, Stacey Lane. I am an NLP practitioner, which means I'm a neuro-linguistic programming practitioner, and I also am an educator. So I've been teaching for the past close to 20 years. I do teach a class at UNM. I teach a couple of classes through the university. And I brought over, there's a couple of classes in here on the Ollie book, on the Osher book, and I have some writing classes coming up as well. So I love NLP, I love doing workshops, and I love writing. So that's a hobby of mine. I do a lot of travel writing. I used to write for the newspaper and a published writer. So Chuck?
Well, like she said, I'm Chuck Holman, and I was drawn to Stacey about back in November, December. I saw an article in the magazine. In fact, I think it was this article or this one here. And I'm enrolled at UNM and the Innovation Academy and the Rainforest. How many of you know about the Rainforest and Innovation Academy? If you don't know about it, it's the best kept secret in New Mexico. You need to check it out. It is exciting what they're doing down there. And so I had a class that I was behind on. I haven't been in school in 45 years. And the last time I was in school, I did not enjoy what I was studying, anthropology, all that other stuff. So I've had 45 years of the University of Hard Knocks. So I have a PhD in the University of Hard Knocks. I have been around for many, many years. Been in business over about 65 years. So give you some idea how old I am. And most people say I don't look my age. I don't feel my age. Most of the time I feel like I'm about 35, occasionally 95. And a few years ago, I wanted to retire and just do what I really want to do. I've always wanted to write. And so I wrote a book, Ask You Shall Receive. In the process of researching for this book, I started studying quantum physics. And quantum physics is a university professor in Oregon that says that our intention creates our results of what we want in life. And coming from my background, I said, well, that sounds a lot like some other things I've heard in my lifetime. And so I started comparing things, and I wrote a book about it, Ask You Shall Receive. We don't receive because we don't ask. So we'll get more into that in there. But I welcome you here today, and I look forward to talking to you after Stacey gets through.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. So we'll go to the next slide, introductions. There, next
slide.
Yeah, and I can. Perfect. So we're just going to go around just briefly and just say hello, who we are, and if you need to pass, that's fine. So just to, let's find out who we're here with. So B, you want to start?
Yes, I'm B. Holman, and I'm here just to see.
To see is perfect. I like to see. Okay.
Jonathan Weiss, I'm here perhaps to receive some enlightenment and new insights, and I hope that will be the result of this.
Okay, good. Thank you.
My name is Lourdes Kirby, and I really like NLP, and I hope to get some insights, and I'm looking forward to it.
All right, very good. Thank you.
I'm Jessica, and I'm taking this on one of my journeys to rediscover my wants and how to accomplish those.
Excellent. Yes.
I'm Gene Whistler. I was invited here today, so we will see how it goes.
All right, good.
I'm Emily. I'm also just here to kind of see what it's about.
Nice.
I'm Caitlin. I've always been interested in NLP, but never really knew a lot about it.
Okay. Okay.
It's Lawrence Monroe. I actually have been doing these NLP classes for about a year now, and find that I've become a much better communicator and listener using NLP, and it's really enlightening. So it's a great class. It's great use of information
Good, yeah, because you use this in your business as well as personal life.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Hi, I'm Sharon Keith. I'm here to support Stacey. She's really friendly. But also, I'm super interested. I work with children in a treatment center and brushing up on communication skills and just how our brains work.
Okay, perfect.
I'm Rachel, and I'm just glad to meet all you guys and be part of this.
Nice, thank you.
My name is Patrick and Rachel.
Okay. Captive audience, huh?
My name is Norm, and I'm a loyal follower of Stacey.
Oh,
and her
Norm.
presentations, and it was great.
Good.
Excuse me.
Yeah, you've used a little bit of the NLP as well, correct? Yeah, with your scripts and things like that.
My name's Greg Riley. I think I signed up for this once before, but it was also mentioned in recent conversations. My life is sort of meetup.com, you know, look at my calendar, what's on there.
Right. Okay, very good. I welcome all of you again, and this is Dana, our programmer, right here. Hi, Dana. So what is neuro-linguistic programming? You know, what is that? And basically in it, and what we did was, and I do this at the school also, you'll have a follow-through. So if you want to take notes and things like that, you're able to take notes right along with the presentation. So I think that works pretty nicely. So basically we're computers, and we have information in, information out. And the neuro refers to our behavior, our nervous system, okay? So that's about our nervous system, and our thinking processes. And our programming has to do with our behavior. So it's information in, information out, okay? And how that comes back out is the language that we use. So what happens with NLP is that you become very aware of the words that you're using and very aware of the words other people are using, okay? Now the beauty of NLP too is even though we're programmed to certain things, and a lot of our behaviors work for us, some don't. So NLP can actually help you deprogram some of those things. Okay, so that's a little bit of that right there. And then our next is, so NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, comprises three key components of human communication: neurological, language, and programming. The neurological system regulates our bodily function. Language deals with the communication that we're putting back out. And programming deals with the kinds of models of the world that we create. So basically our behavior. So it's a very large area of study, neuro-linguistic programming. And just to mention, as a matter of fact, at the college, I do offer 2 classes in it. I have one in the history and the elements of NLP, and then we move into a second class, which is the NLP meta model. So that'll get very specific with language. And that's something also that I teach for the government. The government has hired me to help clarify language, to help people understand. Basically, as a preventative measure. A lot of times you hear about conflict resolution, and that's fine, but I want to try to get before the ball and prevent the conflict, if possible. Conflict is, natural, it's part of life, but the best example I can use on it is if 2 people were to say, "All right, Chuck, I'll see you later." And Chuck said, "Great, Stacey, thank you." So later for me is in 3 hours. Later for Chuck is in 3 days. Define later. Okay, so we get into clarifying, all right? And that makes a big deal in personal relationships as well as in the business world. Make sense? So there's some techniques with that as well. The next, I don't know. So we have 5 senses or 5 modalities. It's how we take all of our information in. So you're going to hear a little bit about visual, our seeing, auditory, our hearing, kinesthetic, our feeling, our fasting, and our smell. The 3 primary ones are these right here. Those are our key types of ways that we express ourselves. You might hear someone say, I hear you on that, I see what you mean, I feel ya. So that's going to be their predominant, their main language that they're using there. So, yeah. So how we perceive the world. Yep, we don't have a... So we use all of them, but most people will have a dominant mode of processing information. So a simple example, next one. Thanks. So it's important to understand this, and we're going to go through an exercise with it with one another to be able to identify what our key representational, sensory representational tool is. So you go, well, why do I need to know that? I don't, because it's importance of understanding your primary modality is that when you start asking yourself questions about what changes you want in your life, this is something that you're going to want to be taking a look at. Because we're going to be talking later, and Chuck is about manifestation, quantum physics, things like that, and this is important to realize so that you can best identify in those modalities when you're making those changes. So, so if you know that you're primarily kinesthetic, you should concentrate on how you feel and what you want to feel more of. If you're visual, you're going to be thinking about what you see, what you want to see more of. Okay? So if you are predominantly a visual person, you are likely to say things like, I see what you mean, or that looks good to me, or I can just picture that. Do you ever hear people talk like that? Where they're kind of saying that a lot. If you're predominantly auditory, you might say something like, that sounds good to me. I hear what you're saying, that rings a bell. Okay, I hear you. Kinesthetic, I feel happy. Oh, my gut instinct is this or that. So what I would like for you to do right now is partner up. I want you to pick a partner, and I want you to, and you can pick whoever you want. Spread out, pick somebody. So pick a partner, and each of you just tell a story about 2 minutes to one another, 2-3 minutes, a happy story, a fun story that you'd like to share with one another. Okay, it can be any story, just something fun and light. I want the listener, okay, the person that's talking, you're just going to be, just naturally telling your story. I want the listener to be picking up for some cues on that, and I want you to keep to yourself, and then I want, we're going to share what that other person was. So just talk regular. Don't think about it too much, but go ahead, you can stand up and partner up and go ahead and share a story. Good, and it's interesting too, because if we send 2 people across the street and they both see something happen with a car, or same thing, 2 different people, exact event, are going to describe it completely different, right? Have you ever heard 2 people tell a completely different story? You're like, wait, were you guys at the same place, right? So, but typically though too, just so that you know, this is where you're at now. That doesn't mean that maybe in 3 days from now that might not change. So there's different exercises with this, but for right now that's where you're at, and that's what you want to be thinking about. And you can be a little bit more, that's your dominant type of sensory perceptual style, okay? But then you can be like a visual, auditory, kinesthetic. There's different patterns for it. So just be aware of that. So in other words, you're not necessarily labeled that for all the time. It's kind of where you're at in the moment, which is important to be able to shift gears with somebody, especially if you want to appeal to that sense. Okay? Lawrence?
I was talking to Cheyenne, and she was actually a little bit of all 3, but mostly...
I was just thinking that. I was reading all of them. I was like, I can do all of that.
Yeah, she was actually. She talked about visually seeing colors, and then also the auditory, noticing the quietness. She performed at Carnegie Hall, so okay, that's pretty cool.
Cheyenne performed at Carnegie Hall, yes. So, right. Huh, interesting.
She has a music background, so I think she sings all of this.
very good. You know, an interesting thing too, I'll tell you something about NLP, was that the founders of this, Richard Bandler and John Grinder, this started in around the 70s, and the government hired them for a couple of tests. And the very first thing that they did, just kind of the synopsis of this, was that they brought them in and they had them train sharpshooters. Okay, they had them train them. So they took someone like me, who doesn't really know how to handle a gun, and turned me into a sharpshooter. Okay, and the way they did that was they replicated every single move, thought, sight, sound, feeling that those sharpshooters had. And that's how they were able to do that. So the government tells them, they said, well, that was a pretty easy job. We've got something else for you. We're spending a lot of money on Morse code and training people in Morse code. So we want to help reduce that. They were having like what was the failure rate on that? Something like
Over
80% failure after like a year and a half of training, so a lot of money. So same thing, and what they did, and that's what prompted this thought, was they brought people in for Morse code that had a music background, that were inclined for music, and said, you know, have you talked to them about that? So this is where this kind of comes into it. Like I said, it's multifaceted, but yes. So Carnegie Hall, and then you have all of them. So you're probably always thinking about everything, yeah. You too.
I think we both sort of came upon everything at different times.
Okay.
Sometimes, I guess I would, you know, if you describe a picture, I guess I would see that. Or if you're describing something else, I would hear that or feel that or something.
Okay.
And yeah, I thought we're a little bit, and even the, I don't know, the knowing part of it, like the mental part of it, I don't know where that fits in.
So when you say mental part.
Well, you can say, I know, instead of saying I see or I hear or I feel, you can say, I know, or I understand, so that's, I don't know where that fits in, but that is in there as well.
Okay, that's another one, right, more of a general, right, but that's a good point, yes. Right, someone who's maybe thinking up here or not just, yeah. Okay, anyone else want to share? Did you two finish sharing over here? Yeah, you two?
Yeah, I did. I felt like, verify whether it's correct or not. I think he's very visual because he described his trip and the journey.
Right.
Versus, the hearing or feeling, but it was the journey, it was the trip. So I would say visual.
Right, okay. Good. And Lawrence and...
Norm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed his story that it involved really all three. He did the relating the story about seeing and hearing, and his friend enjoyed their adventure on a little boat, and the outcome of that 35 years later, he still remembers it very vividly.
Right, okay.
Definitely kinesthetic.
Definitely kinesthetic? Okay, good. So you picked this up for different cues from before some of our, yes, and you too. Yeah.
We know each other pretty well, so it's not very difficult to figure out that Rachel is a kinesthetic learner.
Okay.
Oh, we should train and find other people to talk to then. Very much visual learner.
Visual? Okay, or just visual sensory
I meant to say
perception.
auditory. I got all nervous.
Auditory for him. Okay. And you two in the back, you want to share?
Use auditory.
In June, it seems kinesthetic, actually, surprisingly.
A little more kinesthetic.
Yeah.
Okay, that's probably your go-to. You know what I mean? It's kind of your go-to because we were telling about a funny story. And if you really want to map it out with someone, watch them when they're excited. Did you see that? Did you hear that? Oh, did you feel that? You know, did you smell that? People will just go right to it. So you can kind of, yeah. So that's what we want to know that when we get into our manifesting, okay, and things like that, because that's what we want to accentuate. all right, when we're going to that and when we start to visualize something. So in order to create something, we need to see it, right? We need to feel it. How else do we create it? We're co-creators. Okay, so next is the, thank you. So what is an affirmation? So this goes back to the language, all right? And I have people come in, and when I was teaching, I would have some of my students, when I was teaching a journalism class, they'd say, Miss Lane, I don't know how to write. Get your stuff and go. Come back in and have a seat. Tell me you can write, or that you're learning to write. Okay, this is important in the things that we say. Our brain hears us. Our brain hears us. Now, it's really important to believe what we're saying. You know, if I told that student to come back in and tell me she was a fantastic writer, it wouldn't pass her critical factor up here. We have like a little man running back and forth in our brain. Is this true? Is it not true? But what she could believe was, I'm working on writing. And I may become a very good writer. So I had her say that instead. She ended up published 3 or 4 times and on Disney. She did very well. So this is what we tell ourselves is very important, okay? But we don't need to lie to ourselves either, all right? So that's, yeah, and so if someone keeps saying, well, I'm always this, I'm always, guess what you are, okay? Brain hears you, so why not give it positive? Okay. So an affirmation is a repeated and spoken statement, preferably spoken in first person and using the present tense. When we use affirmations, we are trying to align our emotions and frequency with our intent. This is why it is important that when using affirmations, we speak as though we have already achieved our goals, as this helps us to promote within us the positive emotions and thoughts that we want the universe to manifest more of. So, how do we use these affirmations? The power of the spoken word should never be underestimated when we are looking to deliberately attract and manifest positive change in our lives. I use this a lot, and it works. It works because I believe it. And the more, I'm going to use the word luck, that we have with it, the better off we get. I go to parties and I go, oh, well, I bet you I'm going to win. And I win, and I have the person next to me go, I never win anything. You know, it's just you have to see it, feel it. So words are largely responsible for the people that we are today. The words that we use to describe ourselves as well as the words of others have a serious impact on the people that we grow up to be. Someone told me one time, they said, never be around someone who's going to be speaking negatively about you. Don't be around it. And I was like, well, you know, constructive criticism and that kind of thing. We don't need to hear it. We can hear a constructive criticism, that's fair. But do we want to be around something where, no. So that's one thing you can do just like that in your life. You've got someone that only is giving you negative or kind of finding the negative in things. You know, can't maybe not change them, but we can change where we're at, right? Okay.
I think the Oprah says, don't be around people that bring you down. I think that's different than people that might say something negative. You know, they're still trying to build you up.
Okay. You mean so negative in the sense of what? Describe negative.
Negative in the sense that they're always, you know, criticizing negatively. There's no kind of positive result of it.
Right.
That there might be people that criticize you, but necessarily not bringing you down, you know.
Okay.
If you're wanting to be corrected on something and somebody's real critical of you, I don't know that that's necessarily bringing you down.
No, that would be constructive criticism, right, which is okay. We're not, you know, flowery unicorns. We need to know what's up. We need to make corrections. We want to improve. But if that person's only, you know, there's room A and B, and if that person can only find the negative in B, get into A. So that, because that's what you're surrounding your universe with.
Well, I think that same person saying the same things, people might bring somebody down, or might bring somebody up, or, you know, bring them down. But get away from the people that do bring you down.
Right, right.
You know, not so much what people are saying to you, but how they make you feel.
Exactly, right, yep, how you're feeling. We know how we feel, right? So we can trust ourselves. Be it positive or negative, a single spoken word of a sentence can plant a seed within the brain, which if watered with enough attention over a period of time will grow to become a reality. Do you believe that? It's true, yeah. It's important to remember that the subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between a fact and something that you have imagined. Do you ever hear the saying that we only use 10% of our brains? Has anyone ever heard that? And when I heard that, I thought, well, who said that? Someone who's only using 10% of their brain? No. So we're using 100% of our brain all the time. 90% of that is our subconscious. 85 to 90 is our subconscious. Therefore, if you spend a lifetime using words such as shy, lazy, fat, unsuccessful to describe yourself, whether they are true or not, they will come to manifest in your life. So as you can see, in order to emit an entirely different frequency to the universe, you need to begin using your words differently. Okay? So that's making an assumption that you're not using them correctly. I'm just saying if you need to make a shift them. All right? This is where the power of affirmations come in handy. So repetition is key when using affirmations. This is because the more we tell ourselves something, I am a magnet for all the good that life has to offer, the deeper the message is ingrained. Have any of you heard of mantras before? Okay, so if I'm in a mantra of, I'm looking for a loving, healthy relationship, those are the people I bring into my into my life. Guess what? Those are the people I'm going to have in my life, right? So the deeper message is ingrained into our subconscious, manifesting it in our lives. So what I need you to do now, everyone has a pen. I want you to write down an affirmation. Write affirmations that are goal-oriented in present tense as though they have already been achieved. Okay, so something again, or something realistic for yourself. I'm going to ride the horse at Turf Paradise. Well, maybe, but I'm going to go horseback riding and hopefully go learn, something that's attainable, that you're going to, realistic for yourself. So I love horseback riding. So, yeah, so pick an affirmation and write it down. It's very important to write things down. It engages a part of our brain. Even if we're not paying attention, even if we're kind of half there, okay, it engages part of the brain. You have to be aware when you're writing. Did you write yours down?
I didn't have a pen. A little girl offered me one, but I know one. I mean, I used an affirmation of a puff is the same as a pack when I quit smoking.
Okay. I would say that with this is more about us. Okay, it's about our goal. So when I'm setting a goal, I'm not comparing to someone else. So it's not about a comparison, it's about some goals that you want to achieve. Right.
I believe that it's most effective if you say these affirmations out loud, as you know. I don't
right.
Maybe you mentioned it and I missed it, but that when you say it out loud, you have a tendency to incorporate it more. Like for example, if you're trying to remember a phone number, and or any number, and you repeat it out loud, you're more likely to remember it, for sure. A person's name.
Right. Right. Well, that's very true, and so it's almost like a mantra, and it goes into our brains hear us. Right. So if we want to remember something, a very cool way to remember it is to put it on someone's forehead. If I want to remember Lord's name, maybe I would say, okay, I'm going to put a purple Lord's and write it on the top of her forehead. Okay? You'll remember it. And then I'm going to make an association. So there's a lot of tricks around that too.
I wonder if the way that you do that, what you're talking about now, depending on your system, which would be hearing it or seeing it, or maybe some way of feeling it, so that you actually
to remember.
Digest it.
Right. So then maybe I would have a little story around a name. My name is Stacey Lane. What was your last name again? Lane. You know the song Penny Lane? Yeah. Okay. So Penny Lane. Right. Okay. Right. So, yeah. So that's what, to piggyback a story around it and something, then you're going to remember the last name's Lane, right? Okay. So by writing it down, and then yes, we would say it, what we're doing right here is identifying it. Okay. And believe in it. In order to attract positive change into your life, you need to be admitting the most positive frequency. So we're going to be wanting to believe in it, and it's a critical factor. We're going to take a break in just a couple minutes. Okay? Yeah. And repeat it often, just what you were talking about. Yeah, repeat it. The more you repeat your affirmations, the deeper they will become ingrained in your subconscious. Repetition creates belief. Okay, I can do it. I can do it. I got this. Okay? I'm not sure if I'm going to make it. Well, I'm probably not. I got this. Feel the difference? Feel it. Right? Right, Paul? Yeah, feel it. Yeah, I got this. Yep. So tell yourself something enough times it'll become real for you. And so one thing I want to do, so we're going to take a break in just a minute, but one of the things that I want to talk about too, for just a minute before we break, is a little bit about love and the science of love. So I did a little bit of research, and I want to talk to you about this because it's a lot of fun. So any of you looking for love, been on a dating site, anything like that? Besides me. Okay, I think we've all been maybe on a dating site, had a little bit of that. And whether we have or not, it's something that we can be thinking about in our relationships, okay? So one of the things, and this is all from the science of love, is that we have this idea, which is dates way back, is that we would have, and it comes from the Greek philosopher Plato, that the notion is that we have to find the one. Okay, we think that we need to find the one, our soulmate, our this, our that. Well, in this day and age, those things, it changes. It does. Not necessarily, but it changes. So we want to keep an open mind. And I'll tell you a story what happened to me. This was a few years back. I came from Phoenix. And there was a gentleman that I was talking to online. His name was Andrew. And he had a really heavy English accent. I was like, okay. So we talked a few times. And he came into town. We decided that he was going to come into town and to fly to Phoenix. So he was on a business trip and he flew into Phoenix. I picked him up from the airport and I kind of had the weekend reserved for him, so to speak. The weekend was set up. So we went around. There was a event in Phoenix, like an art walk. I went on the art walk with him and brought him back to his hotel and went back to my house. And the next day we were going to go do a day event. So I call him up in the morning, like 8:30 in the morning, and I'm like, hello? And I call him, he goes, Stacey, I'm at the airport. I was like, you're where? He goes, I'm at the airport. He was leaving. He was going back. And I remember I was mortified. I was, like, what's wrong? Like, what happened? And we ended up being really good friends. He goes, Stacey, I think I might be looking for the Holy Grail. And it was, it just was something that it never really had a chance to develop. Does that make sense? So keep an open mind around relationships. Let it develop. And chemistry is real. Online dating profiles, of course, refer much more often to chemistry. We've heard of that, right? The chemistry. This is real. Our bodies do have strong preferences. So if you're not feeling it for somebody, you're probably not going to be feeling it for somebody. It doesn't mean keep an open mind or, if you're just kind of feeling a little medium, see what happens. But, and there's a reason behind that. So our bodies have strong preferences, and a person's scents reveal telltale clues about a group of genes called the major histocompatibility complex. All right, so there's science behind it. If a woman conceives with a partner whose MHC is too much like hers, her womb is most likely to reject the fetus. Saliva carries similar clues. So, suggesting that the first kiss is indeed a big test. So honor yourself. all right? Yeah, we honor ourselves. That's what and according to a recent survey of 800 adults, 2/3 of Americans believe in soulmates. A good first step in making your love match on dating application is to abandon that fantasy, which can make people ditch promising relationships over trifles. So again, keep an open mind. Some dating sites promise that their algorithms can identify good matches based on complementary personality types. Have you seen that before? Anybody? Am I the only one online? Okay, so that's not necessarily true. I'm just giving you a couple of things. I think you would all know this. One of the recommendations is when we're meeting new people, keep our cards close, okay? We don't need to reveal everything. And think about for yourself if you're a good bet for somebody, okay? And if you're, am I a good bet? Rather, are they a good bet, right? Be that person that you want to, bring to the table. And if not, if you need to get some help or whatever you need to do, get that. But you be a good bet coming to the table, all right? So I just wanted to share that piece with you. We're going to take about a 10-minute break.